I think we have not only a good composition of the panel in terms of the number. As you have heard the resumes of the participants, we have a very influential participants when it comes to shaping energy policy in all Baltic countries. We will take the topic started by Rytis, and we will try to take it on a Baltic level. We will put it in a context of EU 2050 low carbon economy targets. And I suppose many of present here know that the EU member states have committed to very ambitious targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 by 80%. And if you read the news, there are even calls for more ambitious targets. So I think it's good to be at the forefront, but at the same time, we should probably also discuss the challenges that are involved in putting these ambitious targets. So I'll probably start with Rytis and ask a question. You, in Lithuania, you have seen the fastest growth of renewables amongst EU countries over the last few years. So what is the secret to unlock the investment potential in power sector? How do you bring the investors to invest in Lithuania?
It's good to hear your compliment that we are among the fastest, and we have a good regulatory framework. But I believe we are still far from perfect in this regard. And regarding the question to how to unlock the potential, I believe I would highlight three key things. The first one is to have clear targets, is to have a long-term targets, and this brings a clear message to the investors, to the society, to all the major stakeholders. The second one is, I believe, is the consistency. So once you have your targets, you have to stick with it, one way or another. So this is I think the key part. And the third one is the regulatory framework. Is to have this regulatory framework which is used as much as possible in other European countries to bring the certainty for the investor, and this would also reduce the power cost down. So this is I think, and all these three parts are equally important. If you skip one of this part, you're losing the game. And I think this is a good example. For example, with Poland and Germany, they are standing, next to each other. And if you compare the renewable energy auction prices in Germany and in Poland, for the solar energy, the difference is twofold. In Germany, you have an auction bids for 45 euros for megawatt hour last year, and in Poland it was 90 euros for megawatt hour. So, and radiation is more or less the same. So this is the premium which the investor puts, based on these I believe three key parameters.
Okay, thank you, Rytis. I will now ask a question to Andres from Latvia. So, as we have heard, both Lithuania and Estonia are on good track to reach 2020 targets and have already made arrangements for the transfer of its renewable energy surplus to other EU countries. So what is the Latvian estimate in regard to the 2020 targets, and can we actually expect similar arrangements with other EU countries in Latvia as well?
Okay, good morning to everyone, and thank you for this question. Well, as you have seen in presentation made by Rytis, So Lithuania and Estonia have already achieved their 2020 targets, but in our case, we are still going to do that. And in accordance to our estimations, we will be able to do that in considering the current policies. And we will be able to do that in 2020. However, currently we see that certain issues are at the top of policy debate in regards support to renewable energies. So on the one hand, there is this ambition and determination to achieve these targets, but on the other hand, since we have not managed to do that today, this is the main reason why we cannot sell any surplus to any interested member states of the EU.
So what's the estimate on 2020 targets? Are we going to meet them?
Yes, the estimate with current policies, we made this estimate in June, May-June this year, and there was approximate 41% or something like that. But as we see, there is this policy of a bit of policy alignments and improvements in terms of state aid provided to economic operators. So this might have some kind of impact, but in overall we are determined to achieve them.
Okay, very well. I now have a question to Ando from Estonia. So the 2050 targets, these were formulated already more than a decade ago. So how do recent technological developments, for example, use of electricity in transportation and smart grids, how do these influence the action plans that have been set up to reach the targets?
Yes, thank you for the question, and also good morning for everybody. So I would even start from a little bit more distance, because I think being an engineer, of course, you always want to measure something, and I can assume that if engineers would have set the targets for 2050, most likely they wouldn't be such ambitious ones like they are set at the moment, or decade ago, like you said. So that's why I suppose we need politicians to be ambitious enough, and really for politicians, I suppose it's pretty easy to set some targets on climate, on renewables, on whatever, which are, let's say, 40 years in advance. But what it basically brings, I think, is that actually the work goes down to the civil servants, to the engineers, to people who really start to think about it, how to reach those targets. And therefore, I suppose what is the best what we can gain from that kind of like administrative targets, from my point of view, is really the technology development and innovation. So so in that respect, I suppose, of course, to your question, I mean, all those technological innovations are very well complementing to reach those targets, but most likely we don't know yet which kind of technologies we are going to use after 20 years from now, because if you are looking for those targets, if you are looking to real track what we can put up to the screens, for example, like my Lithuanian colleague showed, then we might predict pretty well what happens until 2030. But after that, basically how to come from 40% greenhouse gas reductions to 80% greenhouse gas reductions. Sorry to say, but I cannot imagine. Of course, we can do it in Europe, European Union, without producing anything at all and importing everything. But I think in global sense, it doesn't make sense. So in that sense, of course, they are contributing very well. I think everything what we already are knowing about new technologies, renewables, changing the electricity and gas systems, I suppose they are contributing very well. Now we should implement them by 2030 and really cross our fingers that the new technologies will emerge and we can go on from there.
And if I may add from our experience, you know, it is, you said you can forecast for 2030. Sometimes it's even difficult to do that, you know, because sometimes the pace of technology development are so rapid, and, you know, no one even expected, you know, that even last year that this year, you know, PV prices will go down by 25%, which happened, you know, in the first 9 months. So when you look back at, you know, 2015, you know, calculations done for our strategy by the consultants, it's, you know, you see those prices and they're, you know, the forecast for 2020, you know, they're 2 times, you know, difference. So sometimes it's, you know, at this pace of technology development, sometimes it's even too hard, you know, if you are looking from the engineer perspective to have, you know, your balance set clearly, you know, and it's very difficult even to forecast for 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what you were saying, I mean, we had one conference 1 week ago in Tallinn on the energy issues as well, and I was saying in there as well that basically if I would have been with a message in Estonian society that we are going to reach 50% of renewables by 2030, I mean, I should be thrown out from the room, I suppose. So in a way, life is changing, the world is changing, and really we are much more smarter today than we were 10 years back from here. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a very valuable lesson, that the best we can evaluate is maximum 10 years ahead. So I think this has also been quite important in Latvia. We have been discussing the new 2030 targets. So Andres, what is your take? What are Latvian priorities when we are shaping the future for 2030?
Well, as we know, our 2030 targets are very much related to EU energy policies and EU energy union strategy. And in this regard, our intention now is when developing this climate and energy plan for 2030 is to also to develop this plan as our national strategy in substance. So this means that we will be bringing all measures and efforts into this document. First of all, by setting our targets in all policy fields, which is decarbonization, energy efficiency, infrastructure and the market, and also research and development and innovation. And when speaking about our priorities, so far we do see where we have certain issues, and these fields are energy efficiency, also considering our base in regards to 2020 targets, and also renewable energy policy. And besides that, innovation issues and research and development in a much more concise way, how to contribute to our competitiveness of the sector, of the economy, from the point of energy, is very, very important. So these are 3 main blocks, I would say, today, because with infrastructure issues, with market issues, we feel pretty comfortable today. Yeah? And now we are, in terms of developing this document, this draft plan, we are in a phase when baseline scenarios are being developed, and this week we internally will finalize this part. So in coming months we will be able to also to start setting new policy measures in regards achieving our 2030 targets. So this concerns to all parts of the document, including also renewable energy and energy efficiency. And to the last one, we see that currently, again, energy efficiency policies and measures are not very well perceived so far, and a lot of work should be done also from our side to improve legislation and also to invite and persuade people to do much more. And here we also face an issue of financing availability, because it's very much intensive in terms of cost and initial investment. Energy efficiency measures are very, very costly. So these are main points I would like to say. And again, since we have to develop this overall plan by the end of the next year to finalize that and to submit also to the European Commission, and we are also consulting with our neighboring countries, starting to do that, and the first draft is also publicly available on our website. So everyone is invited to also give his or her contribution in the context of public debate we will have, and we are actually having certain events, and also in October there will be an event organized by Nordic Council of Ministers office here in Riga. So we are trying to have this debate, because we also try to learn from our past experience, both for energy efficiency and also for renewables.
Right. I would read this. I would want to go back to your presentation. You mentioned in regard to your future plans that Lithuania has opted for this principle of technological neutrality in power projects. So what are the risks you see involved in opting for that principle, and how do you plan to manage these risks?
I would like to start from the benefits, I believe. So I think the major benefit of this, and as this is why European Commission, offers greatly to use this technological neutrality, is the effect on the price. Is the competition between different technologies. So I think this is the major advantage of is the lower price of renewable energy generation for the final consumer. Another, I think, belief advantage particular for Lithuanian case is dispersed renewable generation. If we have already more than 500 megawatts of wind, mainly to the coastal areas, and there is a grid issue. And if the solar or biomass can compete in other parts of Lithuania, this could reduce the stress on the grid by the further renewable penetration. Regarding the disadvantages of this technological neutrality, I believe the major one is the uncertainty for the investor. It's not you even if you are competing in the technology specific auction, there's a lot of uncertainties, and now you don't know what's going to happen from competitors in solar or biomass. So this is, I believe, for the investors' point of view is a tricky part. And the other part is you cannot support particular technologies. For example, if you have a national technology, strong manufacturing in, for example, solar, wind, or biomass, you can sustain technologies to be developed in the country by opting for technology-specific auctions. So this is, I believe, the main disadvantages and in this field.
Right. So I'm just going to go through the final round of questions to the panelists. So the question goes to Ando. So I think one of the targets that the EU is now striving to achieve is sort of more uniform regulatory rules across Europe. So what's the Estonian take on that? What has been done in Estonia to unify the rules and simplify the rules for power industry?
Yeah, very valid question actually, because I think this have been the job for European Union. I mean, for the past 2 years more or less, starting from energy union strategy and continued by Commission launching this winter package or whatever we want to call it. So today I think we are in the situation where we have the governance regulation, we have the renewables directive, we have the new energy performance of buildings directive, we do have the energy efficiency directive, and today, or within those months, basically, the trialogues between the Commission, Council, and Parliament in EU level, the trialogues are going to be held on electricity market design. So, so in my view, I think the work is ongoing. We definitely will have more unified regulatory regime through European Union. And I really hope that we are landing to the really the position that we can start talking about the single market for energy in Europe, because of course it have been named already for a decade ago, but to be honest, still, at least in the power market, we are acting very differently in different member states. So, of course, I'm not naive in a way that there is going to be one single regulatory regime for Greece and Estonia and etc. Definitely, there are going to be differences, but at least on regional basis, we could have more unified regulatory regime, and in that respect, I suppose we are here in Baltics, in Nordics, in the area where more or less the electricity market design, what is actually proposed by the Commission in this winter package, is already realized. So, and when it comes to your question on Estonian electricity market and burdens, then if I read the new text 2 years back from here, from Commission on electricity market design, then I was reading almost like Electricity Market Act of Estonia. So, so really, I mean, we have implemented, I think, in this part of the world quite a lot of this. But I think what we have to move on is definitely this regional cooperation and on many issues. So in that respect, we shouldn't talk about renewables, energy efficiency, electricity market, capacity mechanisms, etc. on national basis, but we really should start thinking, I mean, how to reduce the cost for our consumers and have a regional cooperation in here. And I mean, I'm not pessimistic actually. We do have a very good cooperation between the Baltic states. I think in the past years we have very often meeting with our Baltic colleagues. 10 times a year, the Baltic Council of Ministers Energy Committee is collecting themselves, and we are really discussing about the issues. I mean, so yeah, we are moving towards that.
Well, I think this is very good news for the investors. Most of them are viewing this as one region where uniform rules would really be very helpful. So we are running out of time, but I would like to ask a final question to Andres. So we have heard Rytis saying the future for Lithuania, 800 million investment and auction technological neutrality principle. So what is the Latvian future for new projects? What is the message for the investors that would now want to start new projects in Latvia? Can they expect some state support, or it's not planned in the next decade?
Well, despite the current discussion on historical support granted today, I cannot say that there will be no support in the next decade. However, it's clear that we will try not to make our historical mistakes in the future, and we will. Current thinking is that in foreseeable future, we will try to, in any case, combining current support and maybe with potential future support to restrict that to a certain level of ratio to national product, to gross domestic product, I mean. And this will be considered from point of view how much we can afford to help this industry to develop. And if speaking specifically about future policies in regards to renewables, our thinking is that this should be done on market-based principles. So this means that auctioning could come into our agenda in coming years for new projects. And again, we need to finish all issues with current problems, to do that in a way which is acceptable also to companies, if that's possible, and we are now currently working to do that. But the big issue is also related to that, how honest we are to each other, in terms that now when addressing current issues, we see that in many cases, companies receiving state aid or support are not very honest to what kind of technologies they use in their power plants to produce electricity. And this means that, again, on our side, we need to be more concise in terms of what we do, and if and how do we monitor the whole industry for which we let's say provide state aid. But if speaking about future, again, we will develop this national energy and climate plan, and in this plan we will need to write down how much or how big will be our renewable energy targets by technology, and what are the means to achieve that. So I would say that in next year we will see what are our plans in detail, and again these plans will be reviewed in 2, 3 or 5 years' time. So kind of adjustments might be made in the future, but this full picture, I believe, will be clear next year.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I hope the participants have now a better picture of what will happen in the next decade. As I understand, we are short ahead of a coffee break, and I really invite for everyone to join the coffee break and ask questions to the panelists, because as said, I think these are the people that basically have very much to say how the power industry will look like in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So let's give a round of applause.